Hello and welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty with Scott Tregurtha, where we help critical thinkers by giving you the most true and accurate information we can find, which they should be giving you on mainstream media, but are not. So you can decide for yourself and take control of your liberty, your freedom, and your future. And now, here is Scott Tregurtha.
Welcome, everybody. Today's guest is Mindy Pechenuk, who is running for Assembly in California Assembly District 18, which is Alameda County. And the points we want to cover today are, of course, Mindy wants your vote if you reside in her district, but the reason I'm interviewing a local candidate for my national audience is that Mindy is an example of a citizen doing what she can do to make a difference. And the fact is, we can all make a difference in our own local area, no matter where we are in the country, in a very small or very large way. We, of course, don't have to run for office, but we can help in some way, somehow. As most of you are aware, we are in a very crucial moment in the history of our country. And without taking the time to go into everything that's wrong, because you already know all that if you're still amongst the living, I think most of us can agree that in this moment in time, we will either save our country or be at the behest of a suppressive oligarchical government, which is what our forefathers fought so hard against. Well, now it's our turn to fight because Donald Trump can't do it all on his own. So please join me now with today's guest, Mindy Pechenuk. Hello, Mindy. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Scott. Great to be here. Appreciate having the interview.
More than happy to. The way I kind of wanted to start off here, kind of more general and some background, and then we can get into more of the nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm.
For the sake of our listeners who are actually from all over the country, you're running for Assembly in California District 18. What basic area does that cover? The cities, the counties?
It covers, it's Alameda County, but specifically the cities are Oakland, Alameda City, and Emeryville. Those three cities in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't cover San Francisco.
No, that's a different county, different districts.
Okay, good. All right. And I know a lot of people, they're not from there, but one of the big interests is people running for assembly, and the local offices is very important. And you're a good example as to what other people could be doing across this nation who have the right philosophy in mind. So the next thing I wanted to go over is, could you give me a general idea of your background? I know you have a background in economics. You're a musician, you're a bassoonist, and a classical music scholar. Could you give us an idea as to your background, starting with your knowledge of economy, and briefly what led you up to finally becoming a MAGA supporter, a Trump supporter, and running a candidate for assembly in your district?
It's a very interesting background because it started when I was 22 years old and now I'm 72. I haven't stopped one day in between. I was at graduate school at Yale University in music, major in bassoon. And I saw how horrible Yale was as a school. I was very shocked. I thought I was going to go to Yale. It was going to be, you're going to get a great education. And I found it very, not only unfulfilling, but it led me to one of my big concerns ever since I was a child, which is what's going to happen to the generation after me if my generation is this screwed up with the rock, drug, sex culture, which was very prevalent at Yale and everywhere else. And I thank, in a certain way, my grandmother. When I was a little kid, she was an immigrant from Ukraine, and she taught me as a little kid, you have to leave this world a better place than when you came into it. That's your responsibility. And that kind of stuck with me. And I always wanted to be political. I thought you should be political, but I didn't like the antics of the Democratic Party. I didn't like the antics of the Republican Party. I didn't like either parties. And then when I was at graduate school, through sheer coincidence or sometimes how God brings people together, I found out there was this movement led by Lyndon LaRouche. And it intrigued me because the key thing of Lynn's movement was that it was based on the question of what it is to be in the image of God, the creative mind of man, and the historical process of that, which was the question of the politics that was needed and missing. And it's through my association with LaRouche for almost 50 years before he passed away that I was able to engage in these activities to learn what is real economics, which is not about money, the American system, which is about the ability of being able to develop through the creative mind, got us to this point today, new discoveries, which cohere with classical culture. I won't go through the whole thing now. That would take us about 4 hours.
Right, right. That's
Right.
a
But just to sum up the story, I left Yale, didn't graduate, joined forces with Lyndon LaRouche in building a political movement across the country. And that led me to where I am today. Now, working very hard in making sure that Donald Trump becomes president. So that's a short introduction, Scott.
okay. Okay, good. That was good. So, from your economist perspective, how will that come into play on your local level there in your district?
Very directly, it's something I've been emphasizing throughout my campaign, which is if you don't get the state productive again, what California used to have was a major industrial, agricultural, productive, leading in technological development. All the problems that we have, whether it's in California or around the country, come from that standpoint. It comes from the question of what is it in the image of God that actually makes us human and makes an economy productive. So as a state legislature, the first thing you have to do is, because you can't go bill by bill, there's almost no good bills in the state legislature of California. They all should be dumped for the most part. And the ocean is big and it's right next door, so we can dump them.
Right.
Which is, we have to take all the credit that's going into the green agenda, cut it out. We're going to put that into building nuclear power plants. We're going to build that into water projects, like the North American water projects, like the desalinization, like the reservoirs. If we start with those kind of great projects, you realize we could open up all the feeder industries that are involved in such production. You would have water to the farmers, since California does provide a lot of the food for the country. Secondly, it means the small businesses would be able to open up and the medium-sized businesses. So if you don't start from that big mission, you're going to end up where we are. We have so many band-aids that people try to approach and money thrown at projects, which are complete failures because nobody is addressing the actual solution, the root cause of the problem, which is why the other thing is, which is important to the economy, is the question of right now shutting down the drug cartels. That means going to the offshore money centers out of the city of London, run by the central banks, which is where the drug cartels run out of and the human trafficking runs out of. Now, if you don't shut that down, as I say, don't talk to me about doing anything, because that is, again, the source of the problem. The economy has been taken over by this drug, human trafficking, offshore center operations. And that's what's running the politics. That's what's running the economy. And nobody else but me is addressing it in that way. And so therefore, except for my husband, who's running for Board of Supervisor, District 5, is addressing it that way. But otherwise, no one is. Everybody's trying to, and if we don't get to the root causes, if we don't shut down this, you can pass bill after bill after bill, and it's not going to work. So that's my approach on the economy. That's the American system. We go with what we need to do, what we need to build. You generate the credit for that. And that's not inflationary. And you cut out all the other projects, then you're putting the people first. You're putting the next generations first. So that's That's my approach to the economic question. And that is what the speculators, the British financial networks, the Federal Reserve, and those in power don't like. And that's why they don't like Trump and his Agenda 47, because he's also addressing those very questions on the table to get to fundamentals. And that's why it's so important right now, because they know that they'd like to control Trump, surround him with bad people. And we're not going to let that, I'm not going to let that happen. So to answer your question, I hope that gives you and everyone listening an idea.
Yeah, I'm sure it gives them an idea. And some people, I mean, it goes pretty deep. What you just talked about can involve much lengthier discussions. And I do invite people to, they'll have my email address, website, contact information. I invite people to ask because there's probably no way to explain all this in this one small interview here.
Right.
So, but, and I know what you're talking about. Now, it's kind of easy to understand what a president might do if he knew what he was doing and people on those higher levels. But as a local assembly person, what can you do directly to affect those offshore financial situations, Federal Reserve, and that sort of thing?
A state legislator has a lot of power. Now, a state legislator cannot shut down the offshore markets by themselves. But what a state legislator can do is work with the federal government, work with the Congress, work with the president. And that, in fact, is the role of a state legislator, is to have that dialogue, because you can't solve the problems just within a state. And then, so one is to work with the federal government to actually do these things that they have the power to do, that in and of itself, a state legislator doesn't have the power to do. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is you have the power to write the right bills. You have the power to direct where your credit is going in your state. And that's why you can take it away from the bad projects like the Green Agenda. We spend a lot of money here in California on a lot of things. Like my opponent, Mia Bonta, who's the incumbent, and those around her, what do? They let the problems fester, and then they say, here, have 50 million, we'll build a new park for you. Here's 25 million, or whatever, I'm making the figures up.
Right.
But we'll set up a special school program so you can have your kids go to this other school because the school you're in is so bad. But so we'll allocate 25 million. And this goes on and on and on and on, and nobody stops it. And that's the power the legislator has. As a legislator, you can say, no, this is not going to be allocated. Now, it's going to be a fight and a war. I understand that. But somebody has to have the guts to get in there and stir the pot and start recruiting, because the population would back up a legislator who does that. I mean, this area of California is a war zone. If you were in Oakland right now, you'd think you're in a third world country. The garbage in the streets, the crime that's off the wall. I mean, when I say garbage, I mean mattresses, garbage, just left on the streets and not picked up in parts of Oakland.
Oh my God.
Yeah, people outside of Oakland don't realize how bad it has gotten. The crime is off the charts. And these legislators like Mia Bonta say, oh, sorry, this is happening to you. Let me give you a little penny to help you. Meanwhile, stores are getting robbed 3 to 4 times in a row, right near where I live. Their insurances are going up because they get robbed all the time. But why are they getting robbed? Nobody's addressing that question. Sure, you can say, we need more police. The police, we don't have a police chief in Oakland because the mayor is part of the gang that is destroying the city. Mayor Chantal, there's a recall for her, as well as the Soros DA, Pamela Price. And so, but they don't get to the fact, why are kids running through the streets committing these crimes, or young adults? Well, maybe because we got to go back, we're not productive. There's no mission, there's no future, the drugs. But instead of fixing that, well, we do need more police right now, that's no question, but that's not going to solve it. You could bring in all the policemen in the world. If you don't address what's the cause of it, it'll continue. And as a state legislator, that's the power you have inside Sacramento, inside the state capitol. I just, one last thing I want to say on this is that you have Mia Bonta and her crowd. have passed legislation where you can rob up to $950
Yeah,
and you're not penalized.
right.
Now, obviously, that law needs to go. Prop 47 needs to go. But again, just getting rid of that won't solve it. You need legislators who are actually going to ensure the kind of policies and platform and actual physical economy, not just economics, but the education. I mean, I can go on for hours, so I don't want to keep going, but it's one package. That's my point I'm trying to get across. And that's what, as a state legislator, we've got marijuana grows, illegal marijuana grows. Bad enough we got legal, but we got illegal marijuana grows in Siskiyou County up north, in San Bernardino down south, where the cartels have taken over whole sections of California. Sheriffs can't go in there. They're loaded to the bear with guns. And the state legislature does nothing about that. That's in their power. We could shut down those illegal grows, and then they could get rid of the legislation and made it legal to grow marijuana. So that's some examples that I would give, Scott, to your question.
Got it. So to me, it seems like the root evil is very much economic, morals and the culture, right? But if you just talk economics, basically what you have to handle is the economics. You've got to handle the culture because those are the root of it, right?
Right.
Which involves education, which involves revamping the whole education system. But at the same time, we need to handle the symptoms. You don't want to just handle the symptoms because that's what all these politicians arguing about, and they're juggling the symptoms and they're juggling the money to handle the symptoms, just keep throwing money at them and things like that. So what you want to do is you want to handle the root cause of these things.
Right.
And at the same time, you have to handle the symptoms because they've gotten so far out of hand, you can't even work on the cause if you can't even walk down the street and get in your car without getting mugged. So can you give me like a little nutshell plan as to how you would handle these things, combining the root cause with the symptoms?
Okay, great. Since I did cover a lot on the root cause, I'll go to the symptoms for a minute. And let's take the question first of the economy, and then I'm going to go to the crime. Okay.
Okay.
On the economic side, and of course, what you need to do as a legislator is you literally have to sit down and take every bill that's allocating the billions to the green agenda, to building windmill, to building only electric. And you have to take every one of those bills and say, this is not going to be the policy. You got to get them off the books. Now, that's a lot of work. But at the same time, the argument the enemy makes is, well, we don't have enough money to do everything. Well, then stop funding the green agenda.
Right.
If you look at California's laws that are coming out of the state legislature, you cannot build in some parts, not my district, but in another district, like I think it's Berkeley, you cannot build a new building without it being all electric. You can't have gas, okay? They have total nonsense about man-made climate change and the CO2. Everything is geared toward the CO2 emissions, all the bills. So as a legislator, you got to put your foot down and say, no, this is not going to happen. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start allocating and get the money to build nuclear energy. We have one nuclear power plant, and that's about to be shut down.
Oh, boy.
We don't stop it. And the electric rates are going up sky high. The cost of living here is off the charts. And so we have to address what's going to be necessary. Well, if you're going to build a nation, you need a city, you need energy. Now we have plenty of oil. We should be using that like nobody's business, get it going. And at the same time, we should be building tens and tens of nuclear power plants as we do the breakthrough in fusion research. We have the labs here. Why is it not going on? Now, if you have to build, and then secondly, which goes with that, is the water projects. Now, if you just take those two infrastructure projects alone for the state, think about how many million, I want to say millions, I don't know if that's the correct figure, you would be employing in the small businesses, in the industries where you're going to get the nuts, the bolts, the metal, the steel, the plumbing, whatever goes into the plants. That's going to revitalize a whole base of skilled labor in the state that can be employed that's now unemployed, working at In-N-Out Burger. But here in Oakland, In-N-Out Burger just shut down because of the crime.
Right.
How many more businesses are you going to shut down if my approach is a top-down approach, and a state legislator has that power. Sacramento has that power to do all of that. And we need some people in there with the kind of commitment that's not going to play by the usual games. Well, here's what we can do, and here's what we can't do, and we got to have this budget. No, you got to throw that over the cart. And if you're not willing to throw that over the cart, you're never going to get out of the problem.
Right.
And so if you do that kind of top down, well, think about how that would affect the small businessman. Think about the homeless. How many homeless people who are not yet destroyed mentally or on drugs are skilled or could be taught a skill? We can teach our children, have trade schools in the high schools that can start teaching trades that can be, these young people can be brought in to work on these projects as they're getting educated, whether it's in high school or whether it's in college, trades college. So you have to have that kind of broad vision. Does it take a lot to do that? Yes. But so did it going to the moon under JFK. So did it when we built the first sawmills in the country. This idea that you don't do these things because they're so big is the evil of what's been brought into the thinking and the policy institutions. So those are the concrete steps, just a few that I can name, with how I, as a state legislator, would absolutely approach bringing this about. And of course, with Donald Trump in the White House, it would make it easier because Trump has already said, like, he will cut all the federal money to the CRT programs in the schools and all this manufacturing industrial base of the country. So if you have a strong presidency doing this, it makes it easier for the state legislators then to do their work with a presidency and that you can work with. And of course, it means, I know I'm not naive. I've been at this too long to be naive. Maybe my gray hair shows it, but it's going to be a fight every inch of the way. But that is the fight now. That is the fight. And if we don't carry out that fight on that level, well, what's going to happen to the next generation? And to me, that's the real key, is the next generations coming up. So to answer, I hope that gives some concretes of what can be done.
It does. And it's great to put it into perspective. We are in a war, period. We are. And anyone who thinks, well, this is too much to do and it's like impossible, too bad. I mean, we need to, is the bottom line. It's what we need to do. And we're better off working on what we need to do, even if we're afraid we're never going to get there, than keep going along with what's destroying us.
Right.
If we were in a war, a real ground war, fighting, we wouldn't say, well, it's kind of difficult to get out of this mess. The enemy has us pinned down, and I think some of us might get shot, and it's going to be really hard to get out of here. But if we don't, we're going to all get killed. So we need to do it. That's, to me, what the guiding light is. That's what we need to do. And I hope people will follow up and check your website and learn more about what can be done, because I know they're not going to all understand everything just from this interview. But I think what you're saying here is giving people a very good sketch as to what you would be working on, as opposed to what your opponent or opponents would be working on. In that light, now you just described where you're coming from here.
Right. I try to give a good.
Yes. And that's a very good, as far as I'm concerned, common sense. Whether people think it's too hard or not, it's what's real. Now, how is it working in an environment, the environment you're in? Very democratic, liberal, leftist. It's national news. Your whole area is national news. Pelosi, all those people are in that area. How is it working politically in there when you're a MAGA person?
You got to love it.
Right.
I love it because it's truthful. And what I'm finding, which is really exciting to me, is people have been looking for somebody to stand up and not be afraid. And going out as MAGA, and I do my campaign, everybody knows I'm even covered in some of the local press as the MAGA candidate, right? And as people know, very few Republicans are in my district. It's a very low number.
Right.
Most of it's all Democratic, or NPP, as they say out here, independent. And what I find is, well, you'll get some of the disgruntles that say, oh, I'm not going to vote for you. You're with Donald Trump, right? The majority don't say that. when I wear my Trump hat and I'm going through the local Trader Joe's or the grocery store, the more comments I get is, I like your hat. And a lot of it comes from young Black men. Yeah, from Hispanics, from Muslims, from all kinds of people. That's that I see my campaign as the unity movement to bring everybody together. I think it's actually changing the tide. Not to say there's still hardcore Democrats that saying, oh, I can't go with you. I like your ideas, but you're with Donald Trump. Fine, don't vote for me. I'm not going to change what is truthful and necessary. That's why I stand with Trump and say it very proudly. Because I'm finding more and more people are, Trump has a lot of support here in California, a lot of support. And I think there's more support in this area of Oakland, Alameda, and Emeryville than people realize. And if you don't stand up proudly with it, people are going to be too scared to come out publicly with it. And so I love it. I think it's very encouraging. I don't hold back from it. And I find it's the magnet. People, like I set up a table in one of the post offices in the area, and I have my big sign of me and Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And what gets people over to the table is not me. Do they know me? Right? But they know Donald Trump. And they come up to the table saying, I support Trump too. I'm with you. And that's why I'm with your campaign, because I know Trump. And so it's that test, right, to me, that's so important. And in my mind, I think it often like, if you were alive at the time of George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, wouldn't you stand with them? They were slandered.
Absolutely.
There's a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's like at least a wives' tale about Abraham Lincoln. He was asked, why do you only have two? Why do you carry around these two newspaper articles in your pocket? And he said, well, the only two good ones written about me. So I don't know if it's a myth or truth, but it's that. And that's how we're going to break the controlled environment where people, as Lyndon LaRouche often said, go along to get along. We have to, and I'm finding people don't want, they're looking for that kind of leadership to break out of the box and be courageous. And so I think it's wonderful. And I encourage more people to love it, by the way. I encourage more of you listening to go out and do that wherever you live, because it really inspires people to see that they too can stand up for the truth. And we have to actually do that more and more. That's what, to me, it means to be an American citizen of a republic, why our country was founded, why we weren't founded in any other way. The citizens are responsible to be the government. We're responsible for the government. We're a republic. And that right cannot be taken away from us. And I only hope to embolden more people to be like that and love it. You're going to get some people slandering, going attacking you. I get that, but that's okay. That's a badge of honor. If they're attacking you, it means you're doing something right. So that's my thought on that, Scott.
So you are finding in this area that is so well known for its liberalism and so on, you're finding there's way more people there that are thinking like you are, or at least wanting what you offer, than there are who would criticize you.
Yeah, exactly. And the challenge creates a paradox in people's minds, because for those who are not like automatic, oh, this is great. But for those who are being challenged right now, because they're looking at a crisis of magnitudes people have not lived through in this area before. The crime thing and the drugs have pushed it, and the hyperinflation over the top. So it creates a real good thinking problem for people, moral problem, emotional problem, subjective problem, which is that if you know it's this bad, and your first instinct is to say, well, I don't like Trump. Well, if that's the pathway to the solution, maybe you have to get over that. And I love that too, because you're giving people the chance to change inside themselves so that they become part of the real solution, and challenging that axiom in their own mind without saying very much, I think is a very healthy thing that we need. And I have a good faith in mankind in a certain way, that if enough of us stand up, they're making the breakthrough. They're seeing they've got to make a choice. and go over the line of what they think is their comfort zone. So that's the other side of it.
Okay, good. And one thing about that is, as far as people being afraid of being attacked, just if people attack you, just say, tell us where we've got it wrong. Just how do we have this wrong? I'm willing to hear
Yeah.
it, right? I'm always interested in learning.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So don't just act like a robot where the information pours into your ear from the mainstream media and
Right.
then just spouts out of your mouth automatically. Take a look at these things. Tell us, criticize us. Let's have a debate. Let's talk about it. And I know you are out there doing that. That's why you're there. If people disagree, please come up and let me know how and why, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, that's great.
And by the way, I've noticed the same thing around here. I'm right outside of Princeton, and it's very liberal. And when I wear my Trump gear, I get nothing but people saying, "Hey, I like your hat," and, and things like that. And I haven't had any negative yet.
Yeah.
So, as far as what would you have to say to other people who are thinking of maybe doing something? Like a lot of people right now, all over the country, are not really doing much. They're all for Trump, maybe. People who are for Trump, they want things to change. They know there's a bad element out there that's kind of keeping things down and manipulating us, but they don't know what to do, or maybe they're afraid of what to do. What would you say to these people? And I'm talking about running for anything or just doing something.
Right. Whether you run for office or whether you just put your Trump hat on and your Trump gear and go out there, God put you on this earth for a reason. And he created us in his image for a reason. And you can't find a comfort zone. We have a mission to accomplish why we're on this earth. And we're all here only for a short time. Even if we live to be 100, I'd love to live to be 100, a lot to do, right?
Right.
But no matter how long it is, it's not infinite. And so we have to think about with our lives, what was it all about? What did we do that made a difference that we lived? That we actually didn't just see it, life as, well, I got a nice career and I make money and I got a house and all those good things, but that I actually made a difference. Would we be here today if the people who fought with George Washington, and we don't know most of their names. We don't know most of the names of the people who fought the Civil War or World War I or World War II, right, or any other war. But they made a difference with their life. They took a stand for what they knew could even cost them a life. Now, so it's better you spend your life, even if you risk your life. Right now, quite frankly, driving your car down in Oakland is a risk to your life.
Right.
Isn't it better to put on a Trump hat, run for office, stand for these ideas, and organize a movement that can bring your fellow citizens into a commitment to actually make a change when it has to be made? Because if we don't make it now, I don't think we're going to be able to do it again. This is one of those precious moments. And this is where everybody has to do a gut check in their own mind. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy. For me, anybody says it's easy, I would question them. But you have to do a gut check. What are you afraid of? What could happen if you do stand up more than if you don't? And that history, the future generations are really in your hands right now. And that is the question I think is so important to ask. And then once you resolve that, putting on a Trump hat, whatever it is, running for office, standing up, knowing people, some people are going to get mad at you, some people are going to hate you, but other people are going to say, hey, if she can do that or he can do that, so can I. I can do just what you're doing. So think of it as you're inspiring other people to want to make the same decisions right now. Because if we don't take the moment in history we're in to correct the problems and create a healthy population that can think in this way, understand what it is to be human. I know I give a little long-winded answer, but I want to get at this because it's so important. being 72 and having lived over the last 50 years, think about it in your own lifetime. I'm talking to everyone who's listening, whether you may be 20, 50, 70, or 80, or whatever, right? But over my lifetime, I've seen from what happened with the death of Kennedy. So I'm talking from my lifetime.
Right.
The difference when Kennedy was president and he gave us the space program and the optimism that created in us, I was what, 7th grade? The optimism it created about what we could do, get us out of the Federal Reserve System. He wanted to end the Vietnam War. So the killing of Kennedy by the elites of the British Empire and those in the United States and around the world who wanted to stop that. And what did they bring into us? The rock, drug, sex culture, Sunday, whatever it was called, environmentalism.
Right.
Earth Day, that's what it was.
That's right.
Right? And the beginnings. Do you think if they hadn't done that then, would they get away with what they're doing today? No. It took generations to get to this point of destruction. And each point they want us to accept it a little bit more. Oh, okay. It's okay for your child to decide to change his sex at 4 years old. If they would have tried that in 1960, when Kennedy was alive, or 1950s, when I was in grade school, that would never have gone over.
Not at
Or
all.
anything else. It doesn't matter what. Or the drugs. I'll just tell one last quick story.
Sure.
I take the drugs. After Kennedy was killed, I was in 7th grade. He was killed in November. In January 7th grade, I still remember this to this day as if it was yesterday. We had hygiene classes back then. And the teacher said to us, what would you do if you found your friend with marijuana? Would you tell the police? Would you go to the parents? Would you do nothing? Those were the choices. And all of us in the class looked at each other and said, what's marijuana? We don't know
Right.
what that is. And that was how they were trying to indoctrinate. So it's all very deliberate. And that's why we cannot let it go. How much further into the rungs of hell can you allow it go? Or the threat of nuclear war right now. So you don't get a chance always to come back and do a do-over. This time we have to set it on the right course. Will it all be solved right away? No. It'll take a lot of work, but you got to start somewhere to get it solved. And this is, Scott said, which is true, this is a war, not just an election. And we need everybody to put on, thank God we don't have to ride a horse like in George Washington's time. I don't think I would do very well in horseback riding. Thank God we don't have to put on whatever combat gear. But we can put on our Trump gear. We can put out and understand the policies of these ideas and solutions, actually work with people to get it implemented. And you know what happens? Not only could we succeed, you're going to have a lot more fun in life. Doing this is a lot more fun. And I don't mean in a bad sense of fun, but it makes, have a sense in yourself that your life has a purpose. You have a mission. You're part of a movement. So in answer to your question, Scott, that's how I would ask other people why to do it, the why to do it. And you know what? You find it, yeah, there's moments that are frustrating. I'm not going to say it never gets frustrating, but you also find that there is a great mission for why you're alive and why God created you. And I would just leave it at that to inspire people to take it up. We are many, they are few.
In reality, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So that's what you would say to people who are thinking about doing something, want to change things. What do you have to say, your final words to your actual constituents out there?
I would say this, join me, join my campaign. Not, of course, vote for me. I want that. Obviously, I'm fighting to get into second place. The way it works here in California, for those who don't know, it's a jungle primary, which means we don't have party primaries. Everybody runs in the same primary, and the people who get the top 2 votes go to the November election. So I want to make sure I'm in the top 2. I do need your vote, but I also want you to join me in the movement we're building. Reach out to me. My website is electmindy.com. reach out to me. I need to help volunteering. I got a lot of literature we can get out together, but I really want to come out of this with a movement that's going to succeed no matter what. So that's what I would say to people here. And the last thing is, if just to people who can vote here, because the voting has already started, so people around the country understand it's a crazy system. We're a VCA county, which means voter choice county, Alameda. It's not unified throughout the state, which means voting started on February 5th and it'll go to March 12th, even though election day is March 5th. And that means the mail-in ballots have started going out already. I encourage people to go to the polls on March 5th, vote in person on March 5th with a paper ballot. If you really can't get there, okay, take your ballot in and drop it off, but don't mail it in. And don't surrender your mail-in ballot if you're voting by paper ballot. I'm saying this because a lot of people don't know how to do this. Also, I'm going to put one last word in for Donald Trump. Anybody can vote for me. You can be a Democrat, a Republican, an NPP. My race is nonpartisan. I'm running as a Republican. But to vote for Donald Trump in the primary, you have to be a registered Republican or you cannot vote for Trump. So you have to change if you're a Democrat or an independent, NPP, or any other party, you have to register, I think by the 20th of this month, to change your party status. So you can get a Republican ballot to vote for Trump for the primary. And there are 169 Republican delegates at stake. So I would ask anybody who is not a Republican to switch if you want to vote for Donald Trump, to go in and switch your registration. If you have to, you can go back and change it afterwards. But in order to vote for Trump, if you really want to vote for him, which I hope you do, you have to be a registered Republican. If you go in on March 5th and say, I want to vote for Trump, they'll switch your registration, but your ballot will be counted only as a provisional ballot, which means it gets counted much later. So California, my county, is really screwy on the voting, but that's what I would ask people to do. And to vote for me, if I can get into second place, that would be very important against the others that are running against Miyabanta. So that would be my final word, but join my movement no matter what.
Absolutely. Join her movement. And I will put your website in the show notes and I will announce it again later.
And you can give out my email. That's fine too, if you want.
And that is on the website also, right?
Yeah, info@electmindy.com. Yeah.
So you invite people to communicate with you.
Oh, I want people, if they agree or disagree, I don't care. Like you said earlier, I want people to be in a dialogue with me.
Right.
If you agree, great, let's further in the depth of knowledge. If you disagree, great, let's talk about it. I invite it.
Absolutely.
It's the greatest thing you can do. So that would be how I encourage people to reach out.
Well, very good. Then I thank you very much for coming on this show and telling it like it is and inviting people to join the movement and to also vote for you. I'm going to leave it there. And all I have to say to everybody is let's vote for Mindy. Let's vote for Trump. And wherever you are, vote for the candidates that are going to push an agenda that's moving our society forward and not burying it like the people on the other side want to happen. So you all can you'll be able to find Minnie's information and of course mine in the show notes. And I guess that's it for now. So thank you very much for all you're doing, Mindy.
And thank you, Scott, for all you're doing and having me on too. It's great.
You're very welcome. You have a good rest of your day.
You too. Okay. Bye for now.
Okay, bye. Well, there you have it, everybody. A pro-MAGA candidate running for a local office smack dab in the middle of one of the most liberal leftist parts of the country. Mindy, as well as I, invite you to vote for her if you're in her district. But regardless of where you are, maybe Mindy's an inspiration for some of you to see what you can do, big or small, and you can also feel free to join her movement. You can check her out at www.ifyouvote, electmindy.com. And Mindy invites you to also email her with any questions or comments, which you can always do through her website. I put the link to her website in the show notes for you, along with my web and email address. And feel free to email me as well. And please be sure to share this episode and click like or subscribe so you can stay up to date on how you can take control of your liberty.